As of next week, Canadian firms doing business in Cuba could face litigation thanks to the U.S. administration's new policy for the island nation. On May 2nd, a long-standing ban will be lifted, allowing U.S. citizens to sue foreign companies that use properties seized by Cuba's communist government in the 1959 revolution. The U.S. says this could open up hundreds of thousands of legal claims worth billions of dollars. U.S. President Donald Trump has also announced restrictions on travel to Cuba and the amount of money Cuban Americans can send their relatives in Cuba. The U.S. says most of the moves are a response to Cuba's support of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So what does all of it mean for Cuba, and should Canada get involved? Josefina Vidal is Cuba's ambassador to Canada, and she joins me now in studio. Hi, Ambassador. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. This is my first time here.
Well, we're very happy to host you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I want to start off, of course, by asking about the recent announcement, I think it was the middle of April,
Yes,
that the U.S. administration made, the Trump administration made, regarding that it would enforce Title III of the Helms-Burton Act. At the time, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, said, I want to read the quote, "Canada is deeply disappointed with today's announcement. We will be reviewing all options in response to this U.S. decision." How would you like to see Canada respond?
You know, this what Ms. Freeland said is consequent with what the Chrétien government said back in 1996 when Helms-Burton Act was passed by U.S. Congress, and because of the resistance and the reaction by Canada, the European Union, and many other countries like Mexico, for example, at that time, President Clinton decided to suspend the implementation of Title III because Canada and Europe threatened the U.S. to go to WTO and to demand the U.S. And present a case against the U.S. there. So as a result of this strong reaction, Title III was never implemented until now for almost 23 years. And so what Ms. Freeland said is very consistent with what has been Canada's position since the very beginning, because this is a clause of the U.S. Embargo legislation against Cuba that is against international law, and that is a violation of the sovereignty of states and international rules of trade.
You described the reaction as strong before. You said this is consistent. Is this as strong as you'd like to see it? Is there more that you'd like to see Canada do?
I think it is strong because Canada said that they will look for all options and that they will defend the interests of Canadian companies. And they reminded that Canada has what is said here, a blocking status, which is a legislation, FEMA, the Foreign Extraterritorial Measures Act, that gives some protection to American businesses which might be affected by the implementation of Title III.
Do you think that Canada will take the actions necessary to stand up to the Trump administration in this instance?
So this is what Ms. Freeland said. So I think so.
Why do you think that the U.S. is decided to make that move?
You know, now, in charge of foreign policy in the U.S., there is a group of officials who for many years have been obsessed with Cuba and whose policies has been, for many years, a regime change in Cuba. And they are back. They are in high positions in this administration, and they are taking the opportunity to go forward with their plans to go back to impose new sanctions on Cuba. But the main purpose behind those sanctions is to try to provoke a change in the government of Cuba, which has been the policy of previous administrations for several years.
So that the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, for the administration says that that's not the case, that rather they are responding to what they feel is Cuba's role in supporting the Maduro regime in Venezuela.
This is the new pretext. You know, when he was in charge in the State Department back in 2002, he lied when he accused Cuba at that time of developing biological weapons, which was a lie. And at that time he said that because he wanted to use that as a pretext to go against and to provoke regime change in Cuba at the time when they were using the same pretext to launch a war against Iraq. So we have been used to this kind of lies and slanders by Mr. Bolton. This is not the first time he lies. And so he's lying again because there is no military presence of Cuba in Venezuela. As part of the cooperation we provide, what we have in Venezuela is around 20,000 Cubans, mainly doctors, the majority of them women, by the way, who provide basic services, mainly healthcare, but also in education, culture, agriculture, sports. This is the kind of service they provide. And you know, everyone can go and check and verify, and it's going to be very easy to see that.
What is the position of Cuba on the Maduro regime?
We are friends of Venezuela as we are friends of other countries. We have had a relationship for more than 2 decades based on friendship, cooperation, solidarity. It's a complementary relationship.
Is Cuba friends with Maduro?
We are friends of Venezuela, and we are friends of the government of Venezuela. And actually, this is the legitimate government of Venezuela that even the United Nations recognizes as such.
The Lima Group is not recognizing that as a
but the Lima Group is not the international community. The Lima Group is a small group of countries. It's not the majority
including the U.S. and Canada.
Yes, but it's a small group of countries, and they do not reflect the opinion of the majority of the international community. Remember that in the United Nations, there are almost more than 190 states, member states, and only 50,000 do not recognize Maduro as what he is, who is the legitimate president of Venezuela, but there are more than 140 countries, including Cuba, which recognize Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela, and we all count because we are equal in international.
But I guess the contention of Mr. Bolton is the U.S. has taken a view on the Maduro regime, as have many of the countries that you just mentioned, that he is responsible to a large degree for the humanitarian crisis that is occurring there. Their thesis is that because, and the Lima Group has called out, I know you're saying the Lima Group isn't as significant, but they have called out specifically Cuba, among some other countries, for their support of the Maduro regime. What they're saying is, the U.S. is saying, okay, you're supporting it, you're recognizing him, we have a fundamental disagreement, therefore we will impose these sanctions.
And we have responded. We have responded to the U.S. government, to Mr. Bolton, and we have responded also to the statement of the Lima Group. And we said to the Lima Group that we reject strongly their assertion that Cuba could be playing a negative role in Venezuela, because this is not true.
But you're supporting a regime that they fundamentally believe is responsible for a humanitarian crisis.
No, you have to go back in times, and you will see they have their own challenges, and as we all have. We in Cuba also have our own challenges, but you know who is the responsible of the aggravation of the situation of Venezuela? Sanctions, the United States sanctions, the United States trying to interfere in the internal affairs of Venezuela, and sanctions which, by the way, also hurt Cuba.
I take your point, and I know that there is that viewpoint out there. I think that what the U.S. has made clear, and Canada, for its part, has made clear, is that they don't believe that to be true. They have a different way of viewing the situation. They do believe, for example, that the elections that were held there earlier this year were not free, were not fair. I imagine you disagree, and so they're taking that position, and then they're saying, okay, as a result, we're going to impose some sanctions on people who support
This is a pretext. This is the new pretext, as there has been many in the past. I remember back in 1959, the pretext for imposing sanctions on Cuba was that we nationalized American property. We nationalized all foreign property, and we compensated back all of them with the exception of Americans, because they imposed the blockade embargo on Cuba. Then
but it's
they
not
started
just the U.S.
saying,
this time, right?
Then
it's
they started saying that Cuba was a satellite of the Soviet Union, then that we were supporting revolutionary movements everywhere. So they have been changing the pretext all over. But
are then, I guess I see, and there are a lot of people who talk about the U.S. in that kind of context. Okay, the U.S. is one thing, but you've got Canada, for example, supporting exactly what they're saying. Are the members of the Lima Group, are Canada all wrong? Are they all subscribing to a pretext that doesn't exist?
We have substantial differences with Canada and other countries in the way we all see and analyze the situation in Venezuela. And we speak about our differences in a respectful way. And we agree all the time that in the case of Venezuela, we disagree.
Okay. And on that point, I'll end the interview. Thank you very much, Ambassador. I appreciate you coming. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Bye.